On the day the talk was supposed to be of peace, the violence continued with renewed fury. The Israelis had moved hundreds of additional soldiers and policemen into sensitive areas in an attempt to keep the lid on the uprising whilst Mr. Schultz was starting his peace mission. They failed. They particularly wanted to keep Jerusalem quiet whilst Mr. Schultz was in the capital. That failed too. In this incident, border police clashed with a group of American tourists who berated them for roughing up a passing Palestinian youth. The border police, responsible for some of the worst excesses in a lengthening catalogue of Israeli brutality, displayed little regard for the tourists' protests. They gassed them. In Hebron, with feelings running high at the funeral of a man who died of asphyxiation in a cloud of gas earlier in the day, the soldiers moved in to break up the funeral procession. When gas failed to do that, live ammunition was used. And there was fresh evidence that despite assurances that they've been given orders to the contrary, Israeli forces are still meting out their own summary justice. This youth sampled it just north of Jerusalem. And outside Nablus, one of the worst cases of brutality yet witnessed. The youths had been throwing stones. They were caught. According to the soldiers' orders, they should have been arrested and detained. In fact, the soldiers spent 40 minutes systematically beating the youths until they'd broken their arms. Palestinians say this is happening with increasing frequency.
What do the events of the last few months mean to you?
I mean, I sense there, first of all, as one of the people in Gaza said, that fear has been forbidden. I mean, nobody seems to be afraid of armed Israelis, and the subsequent beatings and the brutality that have been on the screen has not deterred Palestinians from a rather disciplined and intelligent mass action of one sort or another. I mean, you know, throwing stones are only part of it. The other is just endlessly disrupting the occupation in one way or another, so that they never know what's coming next, and they can never sort of rest assured that they've got control of the territory. So there's that for us. For me, I mean, as a Palestinian, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of attention now focused on the Palestinians, who they are, what they're doing, etc., whereas we had always been kind of secondary and shadowy figures. We still are to a certain degree. Most people don't know who. I mean, they're faceless people. But still there's some sense in which, you know, somebody like myself is now called upon frequently to talk about this, to express, to explain, to interpret in a way that hadn't been true before. There's a kind of heroism here which has communicated itself to us all, so that everybody feels he's willing to, he or she, is willing to make sacrifices.
Shortly before the uprising began, Saeed accepted an invitation to lecture at Bir Zayt University in the Israeli-occupied West Bank.
I was prepared to go. We were all going. I was going with my wife and 2 children. We had reserved seats on British Airways to London and then London to Tel Aviv. And about 10 days ago, I started to get signals that I'd better not come. And then 3-4 days ago, in mid-March, I got a clipping sent to me from Davar, which is an Israeli newspaper, in which it was suggested that by the Prime Minister's office that should I appear at the airport, I would not be admitted. So in the circumstances, it seemed to me rather quixotic to try, because it would probably mean, you know, being sent back. So I just didn't. But it was a blow, because we had looked forward to it, and I had wanted my children, who have never been there, to see it. I particularly wanted my son, who is named after my father, to go to the school where I and my father both went, St. George's, and see his grandfather's name on the first 11 for cricket and football, you know, in 1906 or whatever it was. But it didn't work out. Maybe we'll go at some later date, but it doesn't look too probable now. Exile. The facts of my birth are so distant and strange as to be about someone I've heard of rather than someone I know. Nazareth, my mother's town. Jerusalem, my father's. The pictures I see of these places today display the same produce, presented in the same carelessly plentiful way, in the same rough wooden cases. The same people walk by, looking at the same posters and trinkets,
concealing the same secrets, searching for the same profits, pleasures, and goals. The same as what? There's little that I can truly remember about Jerusalem and Nazareth. Little that is specific, little that has the irreducible durability of tactile, visual, or auditory memories that concede nothing to time. Little that is not confused with pictures I have seen or scenes I've glimpsed elsewhere in the Arab world. Palestine is exile, dispossession, the inaccurate memories of one place slipping into vague memories of another. The story of Palestine cannot be told smoothly. Instead, the past, like the present, offers only occurrences and coincidences. Random.